Starting off this hour, I want to talk about something that's been going on for the last several days, just a few blocks from our studios, outside of the White House. Every single day, a group of protesters has been gathered outside, speaking out against a proposed oil pipeline that appears to be in motion to be built. It's called the Keystone Pipeline and would extend about 1,700 miles from Alberta, Canada, to the Gulf Coast in Texas, and would transport oil sands. It's a $7 billion project and would apparently double oil imports from Canada. Now, critics call this the dirtiest project on Earth, some saying it's yet another example of big oil just getting what they want. Hundreds, including well-known actors and scientists, have been getting arrested while protesting. Proponents, including the White House, say that this project would have minimal impact on the environment, that if we don't build it, someone else, namely China, will. Daphne Weisham is a fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies and has some major problems with this proposal and joins me now to talk about it. Daphne, let's talk first, just in very simple terms, some of the biggest issues you have with this tar sands project.
Well, as you mentioned, it's highly polluting. It would be like burning coal in your car. The carbon intensity of tar sands, it's not just that you're extracting this incredibly polluting tar from the sandy soil of Alberta's north, but it's the energy that's required to extract that bitumen from the tar sands is so great that you're essentially doubling your greenhouse gas emissions just by virtue of the fact that you have to produce so much energy to extract the energy. Combine that with all of the toxic byproducts of refining and extracting the oil from the sand, largely on First Nations territory, and then transporting it across the Ogallala Aquifer in the United States to Texas, where it will then be exported likely to another country. And it's essentially, you know, it's a resource that we should be securing for that day when we may actually run out of oil. We shouldn't be using these very scarce resources now. In fact, we should be shifting away from fossil fuels, both in our interest of developing energy independence and in the interest of addressing the climate crisis.
I want to show you a recent ad that's come out that takes sort of a different position than you and so many others who have been protesting outside the White House. Okay. Take a look.
We bankrolled a state that doesn't allow women to drive, doesn't allow them to leave their homes or work without their male guardian's permission, and a state where a woman's testimony only counts for a half of a man's. Why are we paying their bills and funding their oppression? Today, there's a better way. Ethical oil from Canada's oil sands. Ethical oil, a choice we have to make.
So what about this notion, that this is the ethical thing to do, that we need to be weaned off of Middle East oil, so why not get it from Canada, a country that we get along with great?
Out of the frying pan into the fire, so to speak. I mean, yes, there are clearly problems with women's rights issues in a lot of the countries that have the largest reserves of oil, and that's something that we should all be concerned about. I find it ironic that this issue is now being raised when, in fact, Native Canadians and First Nations people have been saying this is a very unethical project because it's killing not only the women but the children, all the First Nations people that are downstream from this tar sands project with extraordinary rates of cancers. You have wildlife suffering as well. And of course, the ultimate consequence is all of us will suffer as climate change spirals out of control. I mean, look at New York City was threatened by this very rare hurricane just last week. Now, hurricanes have been increasing in intensity and in frequency. And when was the last time we had a hurricane that stretched up almost the entire East Coast? And as sea level rises with climate change, cities like New York are going to be even more threatened by hurricanes like Irene.
But regarding climate change, I mean, that is a global issue. That's not something that you can, you know, control based on various parts of the Earth. And clearly, everyone has said that if we don't jump on board with this project that will apparently create thousands and thousands, I think I read 20,000 jobs here in the United States, that China is just waiting in the wings to snap up this project instead. If climate change is an argument, how can you say that it will change anything? If we don't do it, someone else will?
Well, you know, that's the same issue whether we're talking about coal or tar sands, and yet time and time again in this country, people have stood up and said, in fact, we've watched the planned construction of coal-fired power plants actually be put on hold over the last few years as a result of popular resistance to coal-fired power. The United States needs to take a leadership position. Despite the fact that we haven't done so at the international level, we need to lead by example if we expect China and other countries to follow our lead. Now,
but
let's face
if we know that China would do the opposite of following our lead, if we said no to this, we'd not only turn down thousands of jobs, we'd give them to a country that seems to be beating us, at least economically speaking.
Well, you know, China is, let's step back from vilifying China, because China has taken far more action in terms of addressing the climate crisis than the United States has, while simultaneously trying to address the economic development needs of its population. So whether it's a foregone conclusion that China will go in there, if the United States really does take a strong position against this pipeline, we'll just have to see how that plays out. There are other ways of resisting the pipeline going through Canada. Maybe the Canadian citizens want to take on that issue if they decide to build a pipeline through Canada instead of through the United States. But let's take it one step at a time and really look at the ethical implications for all people involved in this.
And finally, Daphne, I've just got to ask, and I know that you're certainly not alone in your opinion. Hundreds have already been arrested for this cause. But, you know, frankly, we are at a time when unemployment is more than 9%. The economy is still very bad. President Obama's approval rating is low. There's bigger fish to fry than this environmental issue in this country. Why should people care about the tar sands when they're out of work, when their employment's going to run out?
I agree. And, you know, we do need to be talking about job creation. And let's look at the numbers in terms of clean energy jobs. The amount of jobs, good-paying jobs that you could create for the long term, not for the short term, as would be the case with the tar sands, because the tar sands will eventually run out. What we need is a long-term economic growth opportunity that's being put forward by the president, and it really is in the hands of the president. The State Department has weighed in favor. The EPA has basically issued very strong criticisms of the tar sands project that really advances the economic development agenda that we all care about.
All right, Daphne Weissham, fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies, thanks so much for joining us and sharing that perspective.
Thank you.